Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. It's interesting. I've had a few of you ask me, like, Torres, what the heck is going on with Chip Kelly? And so I feel like now is a great time to discuss. A little bit of a quieter midweek time, but what we know is this. UCLA fans are not happy with Chip Kelly. Many of them wanted him fired after this past season. Chip Kelly is actively pursuing offensive coordinator jobs in the NFL. I don't know if he'll get one. By the way, credit our Torres on Ohio State account. The kid who runs that Dom is on campus. He said, look, there were rumors Chip Kelly was trying to get the Ohio State offensive coordinator job that went to Bill O'Brien. If Bill O'Brien takes the Boston College job, he could be a candidate there. So the question becomes, I've had so many of you ask me, Torres, straight up, what the heck is going on? And is this as simple as what we talked about last week? That guys don't want to coach college football anymore, that it's too crazy, there's too much stuff with NIL, there's too much stuff with portal, there's too much stuff with collectives. Is that what's going on here? And what I would say is, I certainly don't think it helps, but I think Chip Kelly is the weird situation where it's like a perfect confluence of events. He's probably underachieved a little bit as a coach, but we'll talk about that. Strange fan base that doesn't like him. It's a weird time in college football. He's probably not built for this era. And I think it's leading to this weird moment in time here in early to mid-February where, like, we just don't know what the heck is going on, okay? So first of all, let's start with UCLA, because UCLA, listen, I live in the LA area. We have a weirdly large UCLA listenership to this show. So I got to be careful how I say this, but UCLA is among the weirdest fan bases I've ever seen. And I'll tell you why. It is because they have the same demands and expectations of their programs as most SEC schools, most top Big Ten schools. They have competed in the past for national championships in basketball, for sure. They've won a bunch of them. They've had success in football, and they expect the same things that a Tennessee fan does, that a Ohio State fan does, whatever. Maybe Ohio State football is a little bit bigger, but you get the point. And so they have these crazy expectations. But what's different about a UCLA football fan versus an Ohio State football fan? What's different between a UCLA fan and a Kansas fan where the expectations are the same in basketball? It is that UCLA fans do not put their coaches in position to have the success that the other coaches get and the other schools get, and they don't give them the resources to actually compete. Tell you a true story. I don't think it matters now, so I'll just share it. But I remember one time I was talking to Steve Alford when he was the UCLA basketball coach. Remember, he was there before Mick Cronin. And I told him, I said, Coach, you have the toughest job in college basketball. And I said, this wasn't his words, they're mine. I said, you have the same expectations of Kansas and Carolina and Duke, Kentucky, Indiana, but you don't get the same resources and finances and everything that they get. I don't know if people know this. You know that UCLA opened their first basketball facility opened about 6 years ago. Grand Canyon had a basketball-only practice facility before UCLA did. San Diego State had a basketball-only practice facility before UCLA did. I'm pretty sure the entire SEC did and the entire Big Ten minus the teams that are joining. But beyond that, what's weird about UCLA fans is if you're not performing, they're just not going to show up. And I don't really blame them. When I say weird, that's not a bad thing. But if you don't perform, people in LA, there's too much traffic. It's too hard to get to games. They're just not going to do it. And so that's what I told Steve Alford. I said, like, look, dude, I go, Rupp Arena, Kentucky, like when Billy Gillispie got fired at Kentucky, there were like 22,000 people showing up every night to boo him, but they still showed up. That won't happen at UCLA. If you're not good, they just won't show up. So you'll have 3,000 people in the building booing you, but at least at Kentucky, you get a full house, Indiana, you get a full house, etc. So I told him, I said, it's just a really tough place to play. And I think that's a lot of what Chip Kelly is going through. Personally, I think in the modern era, he went 9-3 last regular season, 7-5 this year, 8-5 with a bowl game. So 9 wins last year, 8 wins this year. That's 17 wins. That's about as good as I think it can get for UCLA in the modern era. I don't think it's getting easier when you go to the Big Ten. But I also will say this. I blame some on the UCLA fans, but some of it is Chip Kelly too. First of all, remember, he came in with a lot of pomp, a lot of circumstance. Remember, Florida wanted him. He almost chose Florida over UCLA, instead decides to stick with UCLA. Why I bring it up? First few years, he's like, I'm doing it my way. We're taking our time. We're building this the right way. That's fine. They were essentially terrible for the first 3 years. First 3 years, he wasn't even trying to win. But beyond that, kind of what I just said is kind of his own downfall. Is what did I just say about UCLA? I said, if you're not good, they won't show up. And this is a market, part of it is on the coach. And what I will say is they keep missing on this when they hire coaches, but part of it is on the coach to go out and create interest in his or her own program. You know who was the best at that? Steve Lavin back in the day. I mean, Steve Lavin lasted about 3 years longer than he should, just because everybody liked him. He was out in the community. He was shaking hands. He was kissing babies. He was, whatever. And that's not who Chip Kelly is. Like, I live in LA, and I can honestly tell you, I don't know of any single media thing that Chip Kelly has done outside of the stuff that is required by the school or the Pac-12 or the NCAA. Now, every once in a while, he has national people that he likes, a Colin Cowherd, a Joel Klatt, but he's not showing up to do local radio. He's not showing up to whatever. Like, even Mick Cronin, I'll give Mick Cronin credit. Mick Cronin goes on local radio, AM 570, every single week with Petros and Money, which is the biggest radio show in LA. No, I'm nerding out a little bit, but it proves, like, you have to be out there. You have to hype up the program. Like, you know what kind of coach you need? You need a guy like Eric Musselman, okay? Now, there's all sorts of stuff, what's going on at Arkansas. People are saying, is he going to leave Arkansas? We'll discuss that another day. I don't think it'll be for UCLA because Mick Cronin's buyout is insane. But that's the kind of person that you need. Somebody that's going to hype, talk, tweet, get people excited. And that's not who Chip Kelly is. So when you add in the fan base doesn't really like him, when you add in that he's not really the perfect fit, and then you add in the NIL portal stuff, I think it's all led to where we are now, which is this weird situation where it feels like it's sort of going to come to an end here very soon. And not only that, but that he's actively trying to get out. Don't think he minds the portal so much, but I do think the NIL is not really his cup of tea. And so we now live in a world where, basically a coach's entire job, re-recruiting your roster, raising money, creating interest in your program, those are like the things that Chip Kelly does the worst. And so because of it, I do just wonder if this is the time for him to get out. And it appears as though he seems to think it's the time to get out. Fans kind of want him gone. Now he's pursuing NFL offensive coordinator jobs. And as I said, if somehow, some way, he doesn't get an NFL job, but Bill O'Brien leaves for Boston College, I think it's conceivable that he goes and tries to get the Ohio State offensive coordinator job instead. Now, what I will say, we'll see what happens next. One, it would certainly be interesting to see what will happen at UCLA if he comes back after openly pursuing other jobs, if he doesn't get anything better and he's forced to come back. Because as I said, UCLA fans aren't eager to spend money on a product they don't believe in. And now they know that you want to be gone. They know that you aren't putting your best foot forward. I think we could see pretty bad attendance at the Rose Bowl next year. Now, the good news is, obviously, UCLA's in the Big Ten, so a lot of those fan bases are going to bring fans with them. I'm going to look at their football schedule really quick because I'm curious as to who would be coming to the Rose Bowl next year. Let's take a quick look here as I do this. This is bad radio. Good news for UCLA. They will have some pretty, to quote Larry David, some pretty big home games. Indiana in week 2, they'll probably bring some fans. Oregon will certainly bring plenty of fans. Minnesota, Iowa, USC late in the year. I'll say this, that's actually about the worst case scenario for a home schedule. Oregon's always going to bring fans, but outside of Iowa, I don't see any of those fan bases that are going to travel like 30,000 deep. Like if you could have gotten Wisconsin, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, you only got Iowa. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but you have on the one hand, what happens if he doesn't come back? But on the other hand, which is just as interesting, or what happens if he does come back? What's as interesting is what happens if he doesn't come back? Like what happens if he does get one of these jobs? What happens if you wake up or you're listening to this show and he gets a job? I don't know what UCLA will do. That to me is the most interesting part of all of this is like, what if he actually gets a job and leaves UCLA? Now, Martin Jarman, the AD, is really smart. I know him a little bit. I certainly like him. And what I would say about it is I know Martin Jarman has a list in his desk of guys to call. Very plugged in guy. Martin Jarman came from the Gene Smith, Ohio State AD tree. So he's going to have guys to plug in into his Rolodex. Same time, though, who is the guy? Like I was literally trying to think, like if Chip Kelly left, who would be the next head coach? I can't think of any good names. And what's wild, and I know UCLA fans know this, the two best candidates took other jobs in the Big Ten this offseason. Jonathan Smith from Oregon State is from Pasadena, right down the road from the Rose Bowl. Took the Michigan State job. Tough to get out of that contract. Jed Fish, we'll talk about him later. He hired Stephen Belichick as the defensive coordinator. He took the Washington job. Jed Fish has a lot of ties to LA. So I don't even know what UCLA would do, but this is one of the wildest situations I've ever seen. A coach actively looking at other jobs this late in the process, clearly trying to stick it to his fan base. The fan base kind of stuck in the weeds. The poor AD's kind of stuck in the weeds. Just a crazy, crazy, crazy deal. It's crazy.